Hello, everyone. Welcome to the presentation of Herbal Distillation by Erin Harwood and Eloyce O'Connor. This event is presented by NatureScaping of Southwest Washington and the Camas Public Library. My name is Elliot Stapleton, and I am with the Camas Public Library. Before we get started, I just wanted to share a couple things. During the presentation, you will be able to ask questions for Erin and Eloyce. And you can do this by using the chat function. At the bottom of your Zoom window, you should see an icon labeled chat. If you click on that, you should see a text box that pops up and you can ask questions. And you can do that at any point in the presentation. I also wanted to let you know that if you would like to learn more about our co-presenter, NatureScaping of Southwest Washington, which is a nonprofit organization which maintains wildlife botanical gardens in Brush Prairie. You can visit their website, which is naturescaping.org. You can learn how to visit the gardens, how to become a member. You can also find out information about how to support them through donations during this difficult time. Again, that website is naturescaping.org. I also wanted to mention that this event is recorded or will be recorded. I will send out a link later next week with the recording in case you wanted to watch it again or to share it with friends. Without further ado, I want to pass things over to Erin and Eloyce. Erin, Eloyce, are you there?
Yes, we are.
We are.
Okay.
Just a second. Oh, it says that the host has stopped our video.
Oh, interesting. 1 second, please. My apologies.
That's okay.
Okay. And
While you're working on that, I guess I'll just ask, can everybody that's on hear me okay? I do not have earbuds in like Elliot, so if you can, okay, fabulous. Thank you, Janice, Jennifer, another Janice, Patricia, thank you.
okay.
Hi, Marlene. Oh, hi, Meredith. Hello, everyone. Sorry, not just seeing some familiar names, so. Should I try it again?
Sure.
There I am. Okay. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat.
Okay. And actually, looks like we have two windows here.
We do. So just for everyone, I guess, to know that you are seeing me and Mom is over here in the corner. And then we are also logged in. So we're logged in on two different laptops. And Mom is on the other one and is kind of keeping an eye on the chat. So we have that going multiple ways.
Okay, great. I'm going to hop off then for now.
Thank you. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, actually. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. Really quick, since Elliot mentioned it, here's NatureScaping. I just happened to be bringing it up. So that's what their beautiful website looks like if you want to go check it out. We typically teach a class for them every year. Every year for the last few years.
Thank you, NatureScaping.
Yes. How is everyone doing this evening? Are you getting ready for the hot weather?
No.
All right. Oh, thanks, Meredith. It would be great to see your beautiful face too. She said that she could see our beautiful faces. So we're still figuring this out. This Zoom teaching thing is still a little unusual. As we were getting ready earlier this week, Marlene and my mom and I and Elliot were all chatting, and both of us are, I'm a current teacher, my mom is a former teacher, and so we're used to being in the room with people. So we're going to do the best that we can today. As Elliot said, if you have questions, please ask them in the chat, and Eloyce is going to be kind of keeping an eye on that, and we may not answer them immediately, but we have a couple of breaks planned where we're going to answer questions and things like that. So on that note, actually, about tonight's class, so this is just kind of an introduction or an overview, and just to give you an idea of exactly what distillation is, how does it work, what actually comes out of a distillation when you do it. Excuse me, we have a couple of activities, and then we are going to take a 10-minute break about halfway through. So if people need to go to the bathroom or things like that, they can. And then we have a couple of sort of off-screen activities that you guys can do, and then you can share back into the chat. And then tonight's focus for the second half of the class is all going to be about hydrosols and some of their general uses. And then we have a few herbs that we're going to feature and their hydrosols and how you can use them. And then we'll finish up with any last minute Q&A. Everybody doing okay so far? Mm-hmm. Oh, Patricia, congratulations on being a recently retired teacher. That's awesome. Someday for me. So what is distillation? It's this process of actually extracting or separating components of plant material. So when you look at a leaf and you're out looking at it, whether it's on a tree or an herb or any kind of plant, there are a lot of different constituents or things that make up the leaf. So if we think about when leaves change colors in the fall, you know, initially they're green and then they become red, yellow, even brown. Some of those different colors are actually some chemical compounds within the leaf. And so beyond that, then there are other things. There are oils, there's water-based materials, all of those different kinds of things. And so in distillation, you're actually trying to separate some of those different things out. And tonight we're going to focus on steam distillation. There's actually quite a few different ways to distill things. You can use chemicals to help break that apart or separate those different things. You can use pressure. There's all kinds of different combinations that humans have come up with over the years, but we're going to focus on steam because it's the most common. And it's also something that you can do at home. So some really common examples from steam distillation include whiskey, distilled water, if you buy or use that at all, perfume sometimes can be steam distilled, food flavorings, and then of course essential oils. So here is a really great picture from one of our very favorite herb companies based down in Eugene. So they're local, from Mountain Rose Herbs. And of course, oftentimes the focus of steam distillation is essential oil. And we're going to talk about hydrosols later, but essential oil is one of the other products, so I gave that one away early. And so what we have here over on the left is sort of this big, almost like a cauldron that has water in it, and there's some kind of heat underneath it. And then the herb is sort of sitting up above the water there. And once the water starts to boil, then it steams, and the steam goes up through that herb. And if you just follow the arrows along, so they're traveling up and then to the right. And it's not just vaporized oil, that's what the picture says, but there's vaporized lots of different constituents. There's oil, there's lots of other water-based constituents. And so then in the middle, there is this fancy, cool, fancy chamber. And the pipe is running through the middle, and that's where all of your vaporized, your vapor, your herb vapor is traveling. And surrounding it is cold water. And that's going to get that vapor to condense or turn from a gas into a liquid. And then that's what you're collecting over there on the right-hand side. And so the oil, of course, is lighter than water. And so your water-based hydrosol is going to be on the bottom, and your essential oil is on the top. Really quick, one of the things to know, I always think that this picture, and rightly so for larger companies or farms that are doing distillation, this is a huge quantity of herb. So we're talking about an acre of herb that they're going to be processing all at one time, or pounds of peppermint, for example. So it takes pounds of material to make sometimes even just a tablespoon or a teaspoon worth of oil. And honestly, that's part of the reason why we're going to focus on hydrosols tonight, because they end up making up a much larger quantity of what comes out on the other end. So on the right-hand side, the far right-hand side, where that essential oil and the hydrosol is there, that's a really pretty accurate depiction. It varies a little bit from herb to herb. Something like German chamomile or lemon balm, the amount of essential oil that's going to be produced is going to be significantly less, and you're going to end up with lots more hydrosol. But generally, for most herbs, you're going to end up with 70, 80% hydrosol, and then 20, 30, maybe even less % of essential oil. So just know, to make essential oils, it takes a lot of herbs. So it is feasible to do this kind of setup yourself at home. And there's a couple of different pictures here. One is just a, sorry, I'm just checking my notes really quick. Yeah. So one of them is just sort of a pictorial or a drawing to sort of show you the different parts. And know that you can use whatever it is that you have available that will sort of fit the bill for what the needs are. And then over on the right is sort of showing you a real world picture. So let's look at some of the different pieces of equipment that you would need. And equipment maybe is a fancy, that's too fancy of a term for what we're talking about there. So the very first thing is you want like a nice good sized stock pot. Taller is better than wider. So something that you can get that's pretty tall. You could use a canning kettle or a pressure canner if you wanted to. I don't see why something like that couldn't work. And you want to turn the lid upside down. And part of the reason you want to do that is, as you can see in this picture, that's where all of your vapor is going to go, and it's going to collect on that lid and then drip down into your bowl, which is your collection, your collection thing. Vessel. That she knew what word I was looking for. Your collection vessel. I prefer glass. I don't like things that are metal. And actually, when I show you a link to a little YouTube that I made about our system, you'll understand why we picked that particular system. And so while I'm not completely thrilled with this metal lid, if that's what you have, then I say go for it. You want to make sure that whatever metal you have is probably non-reactive. So something like aluminum or steel or something like that. Or cast iron would be really good too. Like if you have one of those cast iron, like not Lodge, Le Creuset, that's the fancy. One of my friends has one of those. So in your pot lid, the other reason why it helps to invert your pot lid is because then it becomes a vessel or a holder for ice. So you can actually put some ice in that inverted pot lid, and that will help keep it cooler. And so just like when we were looking at that picture before, that lid becomes your condenser, if that kind of makes sense. So let's see if I'm missing anything else. Oh, and so then your glass bowl, the other thing is you want to try to raise it up a little bit. And you can use here they have like a little, I think it looks like a fancy coffee shop mug. You could use that. You could use a tin can to set your bowl on, a glass jar, anything that's going to make sure that it's holding that glass bowl pretty carefully. One of the key things to know that's really different about this DIY at home method compared to the other method, and in just a minute, I think or in a few seconds, I'll go back to that other picture so you can get an idea of what it is I'm talking about. When you're doing it yourself at home, I don't love this picture because it's missing something. That's why I have another one after this. But at the bottom, you can see how the water at the bottom is pink. And imagine that we're doing roses, for example, like rose petals, because a lot of people have those, and that's oftentimes you'll find instructions for how to DIY rose water, which is basically hydrosol, at home yourself. And the reason that's pink is because you have your water. Ideally, it's distilled, so you oftentimes want to start with distilled water in the bottom of your pot, because then it won't have anything in it at all. If you're just getting it straight from the tap, if you have any kind of, if your water provider adds anything to it, say chlorine or maybe fluoride, that will also end up in your hydrosol, and it might mess things up a little bit. So So if you can use distilled, that's ideal. But if you have filtered water, that's fine too. So aim for distilled or filtered water, and you're going to float your herbs right on top of that water. And so that's different. If you'll bear with me 1 second. So we go back to our mountain rose herbs picture, and if you look on the left-hand side, see how the herbs are there, and it may be a little bit hard for you to see, but there's almost like a little platform, and that's because there is separation. They have almost like a little platform, or it's another container in which the herbs are sitting in, and sometimes it's a screen or something like that. And so then the steam comes up through that. So the herbs and the water are not touching in this kind of a setup. Whereas in your DIY setup at home, unless you can figure something out, which it's not infeasible, it's just key to know that your herbs and your starter water that you're going to be steaming, they're actually going to be in contact with each other. So that just means that the product that you're getting in the end, your DIY version, might just be a little bit different than what you would purchase from a commercial distiller. I don't know how much different, because I am not a chemist. That's not my particular area of science. But I can tell you that it probably will be different with them actually touching each other. How different, I don't know. And I also wouldn't let that discourage you from giving it a try. I would just say go for it and make your own if it's something you're really interested in. So I just wanted to go, and so you could see the actual real picture too, kind of for comparison. So here's someone where they have all of their beautiful petals that they've collected. There's their inverted pot lid. I'm reminding you to put ice in that lid, so they haven't done that yet. Hopefully they're going to do that when they go to the next step. There's their little glass bowl. And I suspect with this setup, because it's not a super tall pot, which is totally okay, that handle from the lid is actually going to be, from the pot lid, is going to be the thing that's going to drip that hydrosol right down into that glass bowl. And I think it looks like they've used like a tuna can or something like that. So that's why I wanted to mention that not to go out and buy something big or fancy. Just, I liked this picture because it's very obviously like just a run-of-the-mill stovetop pot. One of those little, it almost looks like one of those glass Pyrex, like I think of them as pudding dishes. I'm sure that's not what they're for, but that's what I would use them for. And then it's just sitting on a tuna can. So it's nothing fancy, nothing expensive, very straightforward. One other thing that I'm realizing too, that you are going to, you might be wondering, okay, well, how do I, once I get this all set up, Erin, what do I actually do after that? Then you're going to turn your stove on. And I would turn it on to maybe a medium high heat or so. And so I would, and in this case, you probably don't, because the herbs and the water in your DIY version are touching each other, I wouldn't necessarily get the water up to a boil, because sometimes you can get a steam without actually full on boiling the water. So I would get as close to a boil as you can so that you're generating steam. And one of the other things you want to know too is, of course, because you're trying to capture the steam, you don't want to keep lifting the lid. So this part is a little bit tricky. So you might want to just like lift it a tiny little bit to see how things are going.
How will you know how long?
Oh, how long? I haven't done this, I'll be honest, I haven't done this method at myself. So that's going to be like a little peaky method again. And I would see how full that little glass pudding, I'm just going to call it what I think it is, the glass pudding dish is.
What's in the glass pudding dish?
The glass pudding dish is going to have your actual hydrosol.
And does the lid touch the bowl?
You don't want it to touch the bottom of the bowl. But if you, in this particular setup that we have pictured here, I can imagine that pot lid is actually going to be like down inside the very lip of the pudding dish. And if that's what you have, then that's okay.
In your custard cup.
Custard cup. Oh, thank you.
And is it better if the lid has a dip in it?
Ooh, versus being like a flat lid?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Yes, it is. And part of the reason is because it's going to be the vessel or the container for your ice. And your ice will melt over time. And
Why do you need ice?
because it helps with the condensation. So when you have your steam, so you have these beautiful rose petals that are, this is so much better than last time. Thanks, everyone. I'm used to answering questions, so I like this so much better. When you have your rose petals that are pictured here, and so the water is coming, now the rose petal water is now coming up and it's steam, right? And it's hitting the lid of that inverted lid that the person is holding in their hand. And it's when it's there, if you don't have the ice, it will take much longer for the rose petal water, the hydrosol, to condense. So putting ice in that inverted lid helps that process go along a lot faster.
What's the proportion of herbs to water?
Oh, that's a great question. I wouldn't do anything, 50-50 would probably be about the best. So I would say if I had to guess looking at this pot that's here in this picture, I wouldn't put somewhere between 2 to 4 cups. So I would probably do, what's that, like a couple inches of water?
Mm-hmm.
So I would put a couple of inches of water in the bottom of a pot like this. And then I would get your rose petals just like they've done, and then get your tuna can and your custard cup and set that up and with your water, and then put your rose petals around it until they're all the way up. Because what's going to happen to your rose petals or any herb that you use pretty quickly, once you get your water going, it's going to be reduced by a half very quickly, very, very quickly. So I know all this fancy equipment, huh? Did you know you were gonna need fancy equipment? So are these things that you guys have already? Do you feel that these are things that you already have? That if you were interested, you could move forward and give this a try?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yay. Yes, great. Oh, so Candy asked, do you need to do anything to the herbs before? And I would say, so that's a great question, Candy. I hope I said your name correctly. With rose petals like this, obviously they've been plucked off of the roses, and so it's just the petals. Let's use another example. How many of you have lemon balm? Quite a few of you have lemon balm. It's a good one. Yes, okay. So it would be a really great one to make a hydrosol out of. It's super green smelling. I like it. You could try it and see if you liked it too. And this would give you a nice small quantity to see if you liked it. With the lemon balm, so you might get like 6 to 8 inch pieces that you would go out and harvest from your herb bed, or maybe you could get from a friend. And I would cut that up into 1 inch pieces, 1 to 2 inches. So great question, Candy. Okay. All right.
How about lavender?
Lavender, I would just use, 2 things about lavender. Yeah, I would just use the buds at the top. I wouldn't strip them off the stems. I would just cut, just the actual like bottle brush part. And I would not recommend using Spanish lavender.
What about dried herbs?
You can use dried herbs. One of the things that you will find sometimes, so if you're inspired and you go out and you do some reading either on the websites that we mention, or maybe you get the book that we will mention at the end for resources, or read online, sometimes you'll find some people who are very firm that you only use fresh herbs. And I don't know. If you've taken a class from us before, we're the type of ladies that say use what you have. I mean, we're talking about pudding and custard cups and tuna cans, for Pete's sake. So I would say if you have dried herbs, to go for it. One thing to know about the dried herbs, it might take a little bit longer, and you also may not get as much out of it. Because the hydrosol is a water-based, you're pulling out the things that are water-based, your dried herbs are already dried, right? Like, so all of the water that was in that herb is gone. And so it's going to be harder, or the process, like it will have to work a little bit harder. Yeah, it has to rehydrate the herbs first and then pull the constituents out. So there's kind of 2 steps that you're asking this process to do. When you have fresh herbs, it's just 1 step. On that note, I guess you could rehydrate your herbs beforehand, but I'm a little frugal with my time, so I would probably just put the water in and fill that thing up with dried herbs. You would probably get a much more concentrated hydrosol from dried herbs, because volume-wise, the amount of dried herb that you're putting in your little pot here, you would be able to fit 2 or 3 times as much rose petals, for example, than if you did them fresh, just because they take up volume-wise so much more. So dried herbs, you would be able to fit a lot more in there.
What if the herbs or the roses have been sprayed?
I would avoid those.
So things that have been sprayed would not make very good hydrosols.
I don't think so, especially if you're going to consume them. I wouldn't. Anything that you do with anything that's happened to the plants, like any treatment that's happened to them, if you spray that hydrosol on your skin, it very well could come through in the herb and get potentially concentrated. I don't know.
So
that makes me nervous.
So you should fill the stock pot almost to the top.
As full as you possibly can. Yep. Yeah. And I wouldn't add more as things go along. I would just do a batch and then be done. And then, you know, hopefully if you're just harvesting your own stuff, you'd have to wait a few days. You'll see some pictures.
Do a different batch.
Or do something else. Yeah, different herb. So.
Okay.
Ooh, trying this today. Yay! That will be great, Patricia. Yeah, it should be super easy to set up and make it run. And I would let it run for at least 30 minutes, probably 45 to an hour, in order to get some good. I don't remember if I mentioned that. Sorry if I didn't. But.
What about lavender leaves? Yuck.
So Mom is making, maybe you heard her say yuck about the lavender leaves. The lavender, the buds have the highest concentration of the oil. So that's a quick little thing. When you're making your hydrosol like this at home, it's going to have the essential oils mixed in. You're going to have essential oils and hydrosol mixed together. So you won't get much essential oil, and you might see like some little circles of oil floating on the top. The leaves don't have as much oil, and they have a different like flavor or fragrance. If anybody's a wine drinker, hydrosols can sometimes have legs like wine does. I'm not a wine drinker, so that's about the limit of my expertise. But you know, sometimes they talk about like the wine having a bouquet. It's the same thing with hydrosols, that they'll be like a front, a middle, and an end note. And I think if you put leaves or too many leaves or stems from the lavender in there, you will end up with an overwhelming like greener, brighter flavor and scent, and you will miss that like sweet floral flavor that the buds have. So I don't see why you couldn't put them in there, but I would be careful to make sure that your ratio isn't too high.
Okay. Jennifer wants to know, what are we going to do with these hydrosols after you
Jennifer, we're going to get to that. Is that okay?
Probably is.
Okay. I think so. Is that everybody pretty good? You feel relatively confident, able to like go forward and try this yourself? I think they're just saying yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Any other questions? I think we're doing pretty good. Okay. Oh yeah, got lots of ideas. All right. Well, Patricia, we're going to come back to that have ideas. That's coming up at the break for some research that we're going to have you do just for fun. Okay, maybe. Sometimes our computer gets slow, so bear with us. I've clicked and I don't want to click too many times. Just keeping an eye on the time.
It's not going.
No. Oh, there we go.
All right.
Okay, so just sort of, we've talked about this a little bit. So some of this might be a little bit review for the two. So these are the 2 different things. When you're doing an herbal distillation, these are the 2 different things that you're going to have come out of it. One of them is essential oils, and one of them is the hydrosol. Excuse me. So for the essential oils, these are the volatile oils, the things that are going to come off really easily just by having some steam pass through the plant. Sometimes they'll do seeds and fruits. Patricia, I don't know if the idea had come to you or talking about having ideas, but you can do cucumber as well. So it doesn't just have to be herbs. Of course, we're focusing on herbs because that's what we love and we're interested in, but sometimes you'll find like clove or other types of like spices as well, essential oils and hydrosols. Essential oils are really potent and super concentrated. They are the strongest parts of what's coming out of this steam distillation. So if you're going to use them, you really should dilute them. We really don't recommend them for internal use. I know that that happens, that there are recommendations for that. And that's why we're focusing on hydrosols tonight, because it is okay for them to be used internally. Typically, you do need to do some dilution with them, but they are just significantly safer to use. They're water-based, they're a lot less potent. They have a lot of the same properties that the essential oils have. They're okay to use on pets and children and even older adults. Sometimes you need to do a little dilution that way, but they're just so much safer. I've heard stories of people like drinking essential oils and then ending up with internal burns and things like that. They're very powerful. And I've never heard of that with hydrosols. So again, they provide a lot of the same benefits that essential oils do. And they're a lot more sustainable because you can get a lot more of hydrosols out of the same amount of herb versus the essential oils. Remember, we're just getting a little tiny amount. So they're just a lot more sustainable that way. All right. So I had this already as a pause. I think we've hit most people's questions so
what
far.
What other herbs do you recommend? We're going to talk about those at the
Yeah,
end.
yeah. So Janet wanted to know what other herbs do we recommend? And Janet, we have some specific herbs that we're going to talk about at the end. And then if there's time, which we're moving pretty good through things, then we will probably get to that.
Can you do the peels of oranges?
Yes, actually, one of my friends from work at the community college does it with her college students and in her organic chemistry lab. And that is the best day to be walking past the organic chemistry lab. It smells so good. Just as if you were going to do the peels. I don't know if anybody's ever saved peels for consumption, like you're going to dry them. One of the things is to avoid the pith or the white, like spongy part, and just try to get as much of the orange colored peel as much as you possibly can, or whatever color peel you're doing. You could do limes, you could do lemons, you could do grapefruits, any different kinds of oranges. Yes, like making zest. Yep, just like making zest. And so because that pith part is bitter, and so that will end up in your hydrosol, those bitter flavors. And the constituents that create that bitter flavor, that's going to end up in your hydrosol as well. So as little of that pith as possible. And then yes, you can make a hydrosol out of it as well. Really orange oil or lemon are really common. Yeah, very, very common and would be so good, like in lots of different kinds of desserts and cleaning products, like all kinds of things. So
okay.
I think.
I thought we.
Oh no,
No.
Yeah, we are.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Come back to this.
We're gonna come back to this, so just bear with us. Thanks, everyone. Yay for questions. Keep asking them. So we're gonna talk about some of just the broad uses of hydrosols, and then we'll take a break, probably in another 20-30 minutes. We'll take probably a 10-minute break, and then we'll talk about some of the specific herbs. So, okay, so just broadly when we're talking about using hydrosols, make sure that you research a hydrosol thoroughly before using it. And we'll give you for the break, we'll give you some tips or suggestions about how best to do that. Like herbs in general, whether you have dried herbs or fresh herbs or any kinds of herb related things, glass is the best for storage. And this is always our recommendation for dried herbs as well. Same thing with hydrosols. Make sure you know what the herb hydrosol is. What was the date that you made it? If you're purchasing it, then that information should also be on the label as well. All of that kind of stuff, so you know exactly what it is that you've hidden in your cupboard that you're digging for.
Did you use dark bottles?
Yes. I stash mine. Actually, I have one. Hold on one second. If I hold this up to the screen, it might be backwards, so bear with me. And you may not be able to read it anyway, but so this is one of the dark bottles. This is a purchased hydrosol. So it is in a dark bottle. It has a spray lid on it. And this is chamomile. So you can use a dark bottle. I'll just, once again, put in a plug for use what you have. The hydrosol that's in the video that I'm gonna share with you, that I made, that's on YouTube, I just used a glass canning jar, and it's sitting in the fridge now. So it's in a clear glass canning jar. So if you have dark colored glass, awesome. If you don't, put it in a jar and put it in your fridge, because that's really the best place to put it, is so that then one of the things about hydrosols that I think maybe makes some people nervous or maybe makes them less appealing in some ways is that they can grow bacteria. So that's why putting them in the fridge is best. Most hydrosols will last anywhere from a year to 2 years after you've made them. If you filter them in some way, like taking your custard cup that you've created your hydrosol and running it through, say, a coffee filter. I have a reusable coffee filter. It's called a coffee sock. Some muslin or something like that. That will help increase the storage or the shelf life of it. That then you just won't have any random bits and bobs in there. And then keep it in your fridge. And generally you can use them. There's health uses, cosmetic, household, and culinary, and we'll go through each one of those. Do we need to pause?
If it's kept at room temperature,
then your shelf life is a lot shorter, closer to 6 months. What's funny is though that I purchased this, and Mom and I were talking about this the other day, that there is actually no recommendation on these dark colored bottles to keep them in the fridge.
So if you made something and you were going to use it daily in your bathroom, you could maybe keep it on the shelf in the bathroom and you use it daily till it's gone?
Yeah, and I would make sure that it gets used up within 6 months or less. So make sure if you're using, let's make the scenario real, right? Like you want to make the lemon balm or the rose hydrosol of what you have available, and you want to use that on a regular, you're creating something that you want to use on a regular or a daily basis throughout the whole year until you get back to that fresh herb when you can make more hydrosol. I would make as much as you can, put it into quart canning jars or something equivalent, and I would put it in the fridge and I would pour off just a little amount, like even a smaller, well, I have some too, sorry. These are not ideal. I know it says glass, but once again, use what you have. So I have a little metal spray bottle, and you could certainly keep that in your bathroom or your kitchen. And then I have a clear plastic one, and this actually has our hand sanitizer in it that I've made that is ubiquitous probably for everyone now, right? And so I would keep them in those little bottles like that wherever you want them to be at hand. And then I would keep your big quart jar in the fridge and just pour off and fill that jar as you need it, and try to make sure that you're using that spray bottle within a few months if you can. Does that help clarify about how long they last, keeping them at room temperature, all that kind of good stuff?
Yes.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Okay.
Ready?
Are we ready to move on to the different uses?
Yes.
Great. Water, 1 second. So when we're talking about health, there are external and internal applications. So when we're talking about external, we're talking about topical. Usually you can use these undiluted, means you're putting them on your skin. Different herbs can be really good. I don't know if anybody's familiar with yarrow, for example. It can be used in a poultice, which I've shown here in the bottom left. And you can use straight yarrow, or if you're going hiking or backpacking or traveling, you could just put some make your own hydrosol. Doesn't smell the best, just gonna warn you, it's yarrow. And you could use that to help wash a wound, slow down some bleeding, deal with bug bites, poison oak, poison ivy, things like that, eczema. My son has like an eczema spray, and I think it has some hydrosols in it, anything like that. You can actually pour the hydrosols directly into your bath, which I prefer that because I don't want an oil in my bathtub. It makes the bathtub slick, and then I'm trying to get out, getting to that age where I don't want to fall in the bathroom.
Oh, you're so old.
I know. Yarrow hydrosol, Dorothy? Yes. But again, it doesn't smell great. You don't make it for its smell. You're making it for its use, or it's almost like its medicinal properties. And yarrow a lot of times is used as a bug repellent as well. So make your own yarrow hydrosol and give that a try.
What part of the yarrow?
Leaves and flowers for yarrow. I would try to reduce the stems as much as possible. So that would be a little bit of prep work with your clippers or some scissors. Oh, peppermint. Yeah, you could do, and actually I would probably use catnip. If you wanted peppermint, you could, and then yarrow. My minimum would be catnip and yarrow together in a spray, a hydrosol in a spray. Rosemary. Oh, mom says she likes rosemary too. Yeah, you could mix all those things. Be quite the anti-bug potpourri. So back to the falling down in the bathtub. So I like hydrosols better just because it's not an oil, it's not sticking. Why would you take a relaxing bath and then have to clean the bathtub because it's like, ugh. So a nice hydrosol can just go right down the drain, no big deal, no residue really left behind in your bathtub. You don't have any herbs, like they always show those pictures of like the rose petals floating on the water. And I'm just one of those people that thinks, who's going to be cleaning up that bathtub and like scraping the rose petals? Like that's not relaxing. So hydrosols, they're relaxing. They smell good. You can have a relaxing bath and no cleanup. Come on. It's all the best. Anybody else use a neti pot? Or is there anybody who is not sure what a neti pot is? Okay, yes to the neti pot. Alrighty. Anybody who doesn't know, should I explain what it is? Or go grab mine. I do not know what it is. Nora, hold on. This is what happens when we do it at home. And we have plenty of time.
My husband uses a neti pot every day. People who have sinus problems use a neti pot regularly. For those of you who just have colds and stuffy noses, you might use a neti pot during that time.
There's my neti pot. It's purple. Like everything that I have, it's purple. So I use a saltwater solution that I make myself, and you just take this pointy part of the neti pot, put it in your nose, tip your head, and it goes through your sinuses and then all the way back out the other nostril. Or it should. Sometimes if I'm having allergies or bad sinus attacks or whatever, it doesn't come out the other side. I know that, again, you will find recommendations to put essential oils in your neti pot mixture, and I don't do that. And the reason is because it is an essential oil and you are using water in your neti pot, or you should be. And oil and water don't mix. And so there's no way that you're going to get that oil to distribute, the essential oil to distribute evenly through your neti pot solution. And so this way with a hydrosol, it's water-based. Again, if you make it yourself, you will probably have little tiny bits of essential oil, but not enough, hopefully to cause too many issues. And you should be able to just put a little like teaspoon. I probably wouldn't put more than a teaspoon in your neti pot, and then you could run that through. I love sage. Sage is one of my very favorite herbs for sinus issues. So I would probably use some sage hydrosol. So you can put that in your neti pot.
And Dad has found oregano is very.
Yeah, my dad really likes oregano. Yes, Nora, my son, has bad allergy. It's other than Mom, she's like the lucky one. She has like very few, if any, allergies, and all the rest of us have horrible sinus and allergy problems. So my son is almost 12, and sometimes I can get him to do a neti pot. You could try it, see what happens. It is a cute neti pot. I love it. There's like a little ritual with it every morning. So I am an avid neti pot user. All right, moving on from the neti pot. I feel like I'm proselytizing about it. They're good. I don't know. It works for me. Oftentimes, if you do a compress or like the poultice that's down below, the dog next door, we have a shared wall and we can hear her and she might be barking at us.
She's praising the neti pot.
She's praising the neti pot. All right. Thank you, Karma. Okay, so compresses, a lot of times you'll make like a tea for a compress, so just a basic infusion. You could just use a hydrosol instead of making a tea if you don't have the dried herbs. You could spray some hydrosol like on a little cotton ball, or a little wad of cotton or a tissue, and stick that in the ear for an ear infection. You could use a hydrosol mix and just, what are the things? Never mind. For sore muscles, like a liniment, you could use it, like you could use hydrosols in a liniment mixture or in lieu of a liniment. Spray it on any kind of wounds or things like that. So you spray to make a compress. You would just soak your cotton cloth or your washcloth, and then in the hydrosol, wring it out so it's just like not dripping, and then put that on either your ear, any infected wounds, muscle aches, things like that. When I make messy poultices just like what's pictured. You can't see her, but she's nodding. Yes. And they're very messy, the poultices. And I specifically picked this picture on purpose because I like my poultices to have the herbs, as long as it's not like an opened, gaping wound. I like those herbs to be straight on the skin, because I'm oftentimes doing things for bruises, I've done some things for like sunburns, hot skin conditions. And so instead of using water with your powdered or your chopped up herbs.
Muscle ache this week.
Yes. Yeah. My son is in soccer, so we've had some injuries. We've done some bug bites, all different kinds of things like that. And if you have dried herbs and you grind them up really fine and you're mixing them with like a clay so that you can make your own like calamine lotion, you could mix a powder, like a clay and the powdered herbs together and have the dry calamine lotion like ready to go. And then you could just spritz the hydrosol on it till it makes a paste, and then put that on the bug bite. So any herbs that you would normally use for a poultice, yarrow, calendula, things like that, you could use those hydrosols with the herbs and in lieu of water. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, great. All right. So for internal uses, a lot of times you'll see hydrosols for digestion, any kind of cold or flu or allergies. And then sometimes you'll see it for like a spring detox after we've been eating all of those like heavy, tasty, delicious winter meals like soups and stews and casseroles and stuff, getting things going again for the spring and kind of, waking up your body. So you'll see them recommended for different things like that. This is what I was talking about before when you're talking about filtration, making sure that the hydrosols that you have are okay for or intended for internal consumption. So make sure that you read carefully about those herbs. Sometimes you will find hydrosols, especially if they sometimes come with the spray bottles, they may not necessarily be intended for internal consumption. This, I wish I could show you, but it's not going to show up. This says ingredients, organic Tulsi hydrosol. That's it. That's all that's in there. Sometimes if they being whoever, if the company is selling the hydrosol for like a facial spray or something like that for a cosmetic use, they will add a preservative. Could be as simple as alcohol. It could be other types of things, kinds of chemicals or just other preservatives. And you have to decide if you're okay consuming those preservatives. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. So I would just look for something that just like that has just a single ingredient and it's just the hydrosol, and make sure that it's a really high quality and from a company that you trust and you know that they're creating something that's really nice. This is also where you're going to want to make sure that you are handling and storing your own hydrosols if you're making them yourself. So that's where putting them in the fridge, keeping them in the fridge, filtering them. If you want to consume your DIY hydrosols, I really can't recommend filtration and storage in the fridge enough.
Are there natural preservatives?
There are some natural preservatives. The Nerdy Farm Wife, which maybe right after the break, I can pull her website up and show that to everyone. She has some really great information where she's tried some different preservatives. She's mainly looking at them for like lotions and creams and things like that. But I think that they could possibly work for hydrosols. Oftentimes it ends up being rosemary or something like that. So I don't know. Our one book that we have that we're going to recommend if you're interested in the resources or the references, she talks a little bit about some natural preservatives, and she mentioned rosemary. So and see, I would just make sure that you've done some careful research and that you're not just buying something like off the shelf at the grocery store. Not that you might be able to find hydrosols at the grocery store, but hopefully you know what I mean, that you do a little bit of careful research before you dive right into drinking them or eating them. And I would really recommend diluting them. So this might be where someone was asking about making orange hydrosol earlier. And so you're making your orange hydrosol and you're going to put like a little teaspoon or half a teaspoon into an 8-ounce glass of water. That would be a way that you could try it. So, or lemon balm or something like that. Okay. All right. And I didn't even have enough space to like fit all of the different cosmetic uses for hydrosols. Whew, like whatever you can think of that is water-based, you can use hydrosols for that. So rose water is a hydrosol. Sometimes you can find that at some of the, like there's a really cool Indian store off of 4th Plain, and they sell a wide variety of different kinds of rose water. It smells so good. And oftentimes that's because throughout the world, people will be using it as a facial toner. It is a little bit astringent. It can help sort of tighten pores and help clean oil and things like that off. So you could just use, like if you made a rose hydrosol like we were showing earlier, you could just spritz that right on your face and even just let it dry, and it will be a really great facial toner.
Going back, can hydrosols be frozen?
Ooh, they're water-based. So part of me says, I don't see why not, but then the other part of me says these are plant parts and plants don't usually freeze well. I don't honestly really know the answer to that. I've never heard of anything.
I don't remember in any of our research seeing where hydrosols were frozen. That doesn't mean that you couldn't maybe do that if you want freeze a little bit and see what happens. You never know. We're always open to lots of ideas and trying things.
Yes.
Again, in our research, I don't remember reading that. I did also, though, in our research, read several times about how hydrosols are really good for seniors, just the nice spray on the face, and how good that is for older skin or senior skin or more mature skin.
Yeah, I think technically I fall into the mature skin category too, based on society's standards.
Okay, moving on.
That's right, moving on. So lotions and creams, oftentimes they are not like a salve. So salves are oftentimes oil-based. They're gonna be like an infused oil with some beeswax, and maybe there'll be a butter in it. That's another class. Lotions and creams have water in them, and that's what makes them like smoother and more liquidy. And so if you are going to make your own lotion or cream, like face cream or anything, which the Nerdy Farm Wife has some excellent recipes, you can replace any of the water in those recipes you find online with hydrosol. When you do that, even if it was just water, most lotions and creams without some kind of a preservative, you need to store them in the fridge, just as if because you would do that with your hydrosol too. So just something to keep in mind.
Could you make perfumes out of hydrosol?
You can, yeah. And in fact, I prefer hydrosols as a perfume because they're just not as strong. So you have to keep that in mind. If you are used to having a perfume that's quite strong and will last throughout the day, know that hydrosols won't do that, but that's okay. Then you can just reapply them and you carry a little spray bottle with you. Get your Zen on for a few minutes while you're putting your perfume on too.
Okay.
You could use it as a makeup remover. So we were talking about rose earlier. You could spray the rose hydrosol on, or even calendula could work that way. And then you could, get like a nice piece of cotton and use get your makeup off. One of the things I really think is great is we were talking earlier about using clay with dried herbs for poultices. You could make a facial mask out of that same, like use a nice French green clay. You can get those from Mountain Rose Herbs, order the clay and powder up your herbs and mix them together and then make them moist enough with a hydrosol and then, spread that on your face and get another nice Zen time and some aromatherapy at the same time. So you could use clay or oatmeal, whatever you have available. Hydrosols are really nice if you're going to make any kind of skin scrub. So salt, sugar scrubs, you could use the hydrosol for that. If you wanted to you could even make your hydrosol and then infuse fresh or dried would probably be preferred, but fresh or dried herbs, and then you could use it for like a hair rinse or something like that. So if you're interested in making any of your own kind of cosmetic things, hydrosols are a really great addition. Alrighty. If you guys, I guess the question is, we have two more, right? We have two more areas of hydrosol, broad hydrosol uses to cover. So we have household and culinary. Are we ready for a little break? I think my voice is, if I'm being frank.
Just do it. Go. Sure.
So we're taking a break. And bear with me for just 1 second. Okay. So I am going to sorry, technical. Okay, so.
At least she can do all this technical stuff.
So I have just dropped a link to the YouTube video that I made the other day where I set up our hydrosols. It's a little bit more than 5 minutes. And you can watch that during the break. So it is now, my clock says precisely 5 o'clock. So why don't we come back at 5:10 So everybody can take a break. If you need to go to the bathroom, stretch your legs, whatever, you can watch that. And then oh, there we go. Okay, stop. Hold on, screen. And then the other thing that I had for you, if you were interested, I know, for example, Patricia was super excited about, like, she was already getting all of these really great ideas, which is fantastic. I would recommend that you think of an herb and go search online to see, does someone sell a hydrosol for that herb? Like I was telling you that sage is one of my favorite herbs. Is there a sage hydrosol? Is there a lemon balm hydrosol? You should go look and see. Two places where you could find that would be Mountain Rose Herbs. They have quite a few hydrosols. And then you could also try Star West Botanicals. So you could try either one of those, or you can just try your favorite search engine. So 5:10, we'll be back. Have fun with the video and your hydrosol research, and we'll check back in with you in 10 minutes. So I'm going to mute.
Good.
All right. So I'm back. Mom is too, and we'll wait maybe just another minute to make sure everybody has a chance to get back on. There were a couple of questions about the
Thank you, Patricia.
about the PowerPoint and just the presentation. And in case you missed it at the beginning, Elliot mentioned that they are recording this. We're recording this. So somehow through Elliot magic and technology, he will make this available on the library page. And then I think he may also be emailing a link out as well. So
Yeah, that's true.
oh, thanks, Elliot. So yeah, sounds like that's what's going to be happening. And so if you missed, if we went too fast, or you wanted to rewatch something, or as Elliot said, if you liked it so much you want to share with a friend or two, then you'll have the ability to be able to do that. And those lucky people will be able to just skip through the 10-minute break. Okay, so how many of you ended up doing some research on an herb? And if you did you find a hydrosol for your herb?
Two parts, Jackie. All right, Jackie.
Okay, so you found, so what were some of the herbs that you guys looked for? You want to type them into the chat? See what people were interested in.
Jackie. Chamomile.
Ah, okay, so Susan was looking at chamomile. Susan, did you look for Roman or German?
Sometimes it doesn't distinguish. Lemon balm, tarragon.
Janice, you looked for tarragon.
All right.
Wow.
Calendula.
Oh, skullcap. Okay. I don't, did you, so Dane, you found skullcap hydrosol? That's cool.
I've been using essential oils for arthritis.
Okay.
I make hydrosols now.
So Susan said that she saw both German and Roman chamomile hydrosols, and she didn't know that there's a difference. And indeed there is. So really super fast, because I think we have time for it real quick. German chamomile is the annual, super easy to grow. It will reseed itself if you grow it. It's the herb that is in your tea. When you buy chamomile tea, that's what German chamomile is. Roman chamomile is low growing and is a perennial, and it was really commonly used as like a lawn ground cover or lawn alternative, especially over in Europe. It smells amazing, Roman chamomile. When you walk on it, it smells like this very light, appley, fruity, floral scent. It's so good. In tea that you drink, oh my gosh, it's so strong, it's gross. So, but some people drink Roman chamomile tea and think it's great. So it just on the taste spectrum, it's quite strong. So if you make a hydrosol out of it, you might need to dilute it a little bit. But I think that's true of German chamomile as well. So
Susan says that the setup in our video looks complicated. Does it do the same thing as the process as the cup and the bowl and the pan?
Oh, the setup in the video that we have,
yeah, of your setup,
of our the glass setup, it is a little complicated, Susan. And I'll be honest, I don't usually set it up because all of that glass freaks me out and I'm afraid I'm going to break it. So my husband actually sets it up. He likes chemistry and like traditional biology labs, and I'm a field person, and so he'll set that up for me. It's much more like, let's see if we can get it to work. Sometimes the PowerPoint is a little slow. The glass setup is much more like the setup that we showed you at the beginning with the depiction from Mountain Rose Herbs. So the DIY setup that you do at home will do mostly the same thing. Your DIY setup will have you end up with more water. Like you will have your concentration of water, because the herbs are floating in the water, then you're going to end up with a little bit more water in your finished hydrosol. But again, I don't think it's that big of a deal. So it essentially, it does the same thing. There's just, ours does a separation between the herb and the water, just like the copper pictures I've been showing. That's a really, so copper, metal copper or distillation units are the most common, just like they use for stills for like whiskey and all of that kind of stuff. So, all right. We are not going to get the PowerPoint to go backwards. Okay, so we were talking about hydrosol uses.
Have you done any precious metals like silver?
No. So we were talking about hydrosol uses. We covered health and cosmetic before the break. Thanks for bearing with me. We're going to pick back up when we where we left off, which was at household uses. So you can use it for your laundry. You can use it as a final rinse. I honestly don't know how I would do that in my fancy high efficiency washing machine, but you could spray them. I don't know if anybody else has the wool dryer balls. You could spray your dryer balls with the hydrosol, which again, I would prefer over using essential oils because I don't want the oils to get all over my clean clothes in the dryer. So that's how I would probably use the hydrosols, is I would spray my wool dryer balls with that and then put them in the dryer. You can use them as a linen spray. Sometimes if your towels have been sitting for a little while, or if you have quite a collection, or maybe it's in a spare bathroom where you don't use those towels very often.
Or you leave them in the dryer and forget them for a few days.
Or they get left in the washing machine overnight. Like that has happened to me before too. And then they just smell a little funky, right? You can use this hydrosol and just put it straight onto your towels or your sheets or whatever, and just a little way to like freshen stuff up. The picture I have here is someone who has made their own lavender and rose. So if you don't want something quite so floral, you could try something else. Like maybe you prefer greener, brighter scents, and maybe that would be where lemon balm could come in, or lemon verbena or something like that. Who dusts their furniture? I'm looking because someone dusts their furniture
Every week.
and someone doesn't dust her furniture. But I don't see why you couldn't use it also as a cleaning. Right before the class today, we're at my house today instead of at the herb farm, doing this because it was going to be quieter and no one else is here. So all of the guys in our family are over at the farm doing who knows what. I asked my almost 12-year-old son to clean the dining room table off. So you could put some hydrosol with your soap if you wanted to, like just maybe a couple drops of like Dr. Bronner's. Yes, with soap. And that's because our table gets dirty enough to need that. Have an almost 12-year-old, come on.
Your Murphy's.
And so you could mix the hydrosol with whatever your cleaning product is, some vinegar, whatever, and spray that onto your table and wipe it down that way. Like really wipe it down. Sorry, that's what I have in my house.
The difference in smell between lemon verbena and lemon balm. So the difference is quantity. Lemon verbena is considered the most lemony smelling and tasting herb that we have. And so you would have a much stronger citrusy smell and flavor from lemon verbena. Both are annuals and perennials, and so they would be available. So if you wanted something strong, more citrusy, lemony, you would go with lemon verbena. And if you were fine with a less powerful citrus taste, lemon balm would be great. Lemon balm, being a mint, is probably much more prolific, and you would have access to more of that particular herb product than you would with lemon verbena. But both are very lemony.
Dorothy, I vacuum my furniture too, but I have a dog. You know what? On that note, actually, I'd give my couch a vacuum, spray some hydrosol right on that couch. Whew, take care of that dog smell. Even she is not here this evening, so she is elsewhere. So I'm not embarrassing her by talking about her.
Oh, no.
She probably would be, she would know immediately that I was talking about her, be making a face at me. She's that kind of dog. So I don't know if anybody else uses, I mentioned Dr. Bronner's. I use Dr. Bronner's in all of my soap dispensers that are, you know, like at the kitchen sink and in the bathrooms. And I dilute the Dr. Bronner's down. And so instead of with water, and so instead of using water, you could use hydrosols instead. If you wanted to make your own hydrosol, then you could use either, like I really like the peppermint Dr. Bronner's, and if you wanted it to be more pepperminty, you could use peppermint hydrosol. You could use rose hydrosol and have peppermint rose or lavender, you know, whatever. Go to town. And then this, while my son is not old enough to need this anymore, it did make me think of him being younger. And so it could work for grandkids if you have kids of that age, or your own children, as a monster spray. And I wish that I had kind of known about this, because I think maybe it would have worked for a little while.
Bad dreams.
Yeah, get rid of the bad dreams or the bad juju. So you could use it for that too. I've had to do something like that in the last few years, actually. So you could call it a monster spray depending on the age of your kid. Maybe you need it for yourself. So you could scare away the nighttime monsters, help clear the air. A really quick story. I moved into a new office at work at the college this last fall and got to be in it for like 6 months, so 2 quarters. And when I was cleaning it, after I cleaned it, I actually took a lavender hydrosol and I sprayed it into the corners and sort of like use that as part of sort of a process to make the office my space and like clear whatever was in there out before, whether that be spiders physically or any kind of like vibes or feelings or whatever. I just went around and like sort of anointed my office in each of the corners, and it actually made me feel much better. Like then I felt like that space was mine. So you could do the same type of thing in any of your spaces if you just needed a way to kind of like clear the air, both physically and mentally. So it can work that way too.
What about elderberry hydrosol?
Oh, that is next level. I would only do the berries, and I would make sure that you removed as much of the stem as possible. And then personally, I would be a little concerned that if you're doing elderberries, that the steam wouldn't be hot enough. Because one of the things when you're working with elderberries is that you're just doing the berries and then you're heating them up to break down any of the things in the berries to make sure that they're safe to consume. So yeah.
Do some more research.
Yeah, I know there's some new information coming, like very recent research that Mom and I were just reading in one of our magazines that we get. It's called The Essential Herbal. And she was connecting with someone from a university in the Midwest somewhere, I think, that he was starting to look at, were elderberries really as bad as people think that they are? So
What if you crushed the berries?
that could help. You could also, the one thing I would do is I would probably cook them for a little bit. And I know that I guess if you're doing DIYing it yourself at home, like then they're actually in the water. Sorry, I'm working my way through this live. I would make sure I would boil it. Like then I would crank up the heat on that one. And then I would probably be more comfortable.
Could they be used as a household product?
Use elderberries as a household product? I suspect that the person who's asking about elderberries is probably thinking of it in a medicinal use rather than household. If I was going to do household, I'd probably stick like to what I have pictured here: lavender, rose, lemon balm, any kind of citrus peels. That's what I can come up with, but I'm sure there's lots more. So,
Do you think tea tree hydrosol could be used to combat COVID-19 in the air or on surfaces?
tea tree hydrosol.
Not by itself.
Yeah, I wouldn't say by itself. So most of the recommendations from the CDC, like if you're talking about making your own hand sanitizer, like I showed earlier, they're recommending it was somewhere between 60 and 70% alcohol content. And so that was just for like germs on your hands. I know that some people put hydrosols and essential oils in their, what are the things that you put essential oils in? Diffuser. See, I just started to ask you guys, and then her brain finally kicked in and helped me. I know that people put, like, you could put your hydrosols into your diffuser and you could use it that way. But I'm not one of those people that would rely on that, even with essential oils. But I'm not an essential oils in the diffuser type of gal either. So
we better move on.
But I would do hydrosols in the diffuser. We're waiting for the PowerPoint. While mom is pretending that she's falling asleep. Can't help it. It's your computer.
It's your Wi-Fi.
It's not. Okay. Any other questions? No. There we go. All right. We had to wake it up. I guess it fell asleep. We got to talking too much. Okay. So for culinary, the standard dilution rate is 2 tablespoons of hydrosol in 1 liter of water. So a lot of times you'll find it in beverages. I know these are shot glasses here. I imagine them to be water. I'm not much of a drinker, but you could use them in cocktails, any kind of teas if you felt like you needed a little extra, smoothies. So if you wanted something good in your smoothie, anything that you're making that has water in it, again, you can replace all or some of the water in your culinary recipe with hydrosols. So if you're cooking, if it's cooking, like you're making a soup or a sauce and it's warm or hot, I would add the hydrosol at the very end because it's going to end up causing it to break down faster. Just as if you were going to use fresh herbs, you want to put your pretend like your fresh herbs or your hydrosol is like a fresh herb and you want to add it in at the very end. So like pull it off the stove, let it cool for a few minutes while you're getting your pasta ready or whatever, and then stir your hydrosol in right at the end. If you're doing salad dressings or things like that, it's cold and then you can just, or room temperature, then you can just mix it in and it should be fine. If you are so inclined that you have enough hydrosol, you could steam your vegetables in the hydrosol instead of water. And so then you would have green beans that are lightly flavored.
Steamed by tarragon.
Steamed by tarragon, which whoever it was that was looking at tarragon hydrosol, I can't get behind that because I don't like tarragon, but it's mom's very favorite herb. So she is fully behind you. And that's what made her think of it. She's like over here envisioning like veggies steamed in tarragon. It's the best. So not my thing, but maybe yours and definitely mom's. And I'm sure there are lots of other ideas for culinary uses too. So, all right. So here are the herbs that we have, the hydrosols that we're going to talk about. So we have basil, lemon balm, which we've already mentioned several times, mints, roses, lavender, and thyme. So we have specifically picked herbs that are ones that are relatively easy for the average gardener to grow. So this just goes along with the time that we spent on the DIY method. So the intent is to make this very easy for you to leave today's class, and if you are so inclined, to start with some really easy herbs that hopefully you have some or maybe all of them in your gardens. All right, so basil, you're going to get a very strong licorice anise type scent. The undiluted flavor is going to be super intense, maybe bordering on unpleasant, unless you just really love basil, but it's going to be really strong if you just have the straight hydrosol. So if you dilute it a little bit, even maybe like 25%, then you'll get more of that basil flavor to come out. If you're doing the DIY method, like we showed before with the stock pot and everything, just take a little tiny bit and taste it, because remember, if you're doing the DIY method, your herb is floating in water. So it may already be dilute enough that to taste it, it's fine for you straight. So I would just recommend, if you're doing the DIY method, like just give it a little taste and see if it's already okay. Like so many culinary herbs, one of the people that I've studied with, she has said, if the herb is in your spice cupboard, it's there because it's good for digestion. And basil is that same way. So you'll oftentimes find it as an effective digestive aid, really good for gas relief, particularly if you ate a little bit too much. Cosmetic, it's really good for oily type skin. And I'm realizing it's covered up, I'm sorry. And older, so anything, it can be just really nice for, like, if you have kind of like mixed, like if you have parts that are oily and then parts that are dry. So you'll find it sometimes in bar soaps or cleansers. If anybody makes their own soap, you could use hydrosol in the soap as well. Or you could mix it in with your with like just a nice basic soap to make your own facial cleanser. I don't really have any like household uses to recommend it, but if you end up really liking the scent, then mix it with some vinegar and use it to clean your kitchen sink. You know, it's kind of whatever floats your boat. You could actually use, if you wanted to do a little bit of hydrosol in your pestos, for example. Right now is prime pesto time. I just harvested a whole bunch of different herbs, and that'll be my other plug for pesto, that you don't just have to use basil. You can use all different kinds of herbs. You can do mixtures, and then you could pour some hydrosol in there, and there's your chance for freezing it, because a lot of people make their pesto and then freeze it. We mentioned salad dressings earlier, soups, any kind of savory dishes. Again, just a kind reminder, you're going to be adding that at the end of anything that you're cooking. Oh, really quick. Also, we're just talking about basic basil here. I have a picture of the purple basil up in the right-hand side. There's also lemon basil, cinnamon basil, Thai basil, there's holy basil or tulsi. So there are lots of different kinds of basil. Other than the holy basil or the tulsi, the lemon, the Thai, the purple, you could make hydrosol out of that, and it would pretty much fit the same sort of expectations or suggestions for here. Tulsi basil is a little bit different. That's when it under health, where it says works efficiently and quickly on reducing stress, that's what the tulsi or the holy basil would be for. And that was actually one of the when I was holding up the brown bottle earlier, that was one of the hydrosols that I purchased, is tulsi. Okay, lemon balm, good old lemon balm. And I say that because, and Mom's nodding, because it's super easy to grow. Sturdy, I guess, is one of the words that comes to mind. Poor lemon balm, known as sturdy. The hydrosol for lemon balm is not going to be, if you've ever tasted fresh lemon balm, the flavor is really like just this very bright green lemon flavor, and quite strong and brisk, almost is a good word for it. And the hydrosol is not like that. It's a lot lighter, and there's a little bit more of a floral hint to it. So you lose a little bit of that like sharp lemon flavor. When you taste it, if it's undiluted, it's actually a little bit bitter, and that lemon flavor will also come out as well. And so if you dilute it, that's when you're going to get this like nice sweet type flavor, and it can be really tasty. I'm going to skip down to the culinary because this is actually not listed there, but you can use it in desserts and things like that as well. Like I would use it in like an icing or something like that for, say, like a zucchini bread. If you're making something like that and you're going to make like an icing for a cake or a bread, you could do it that way. It would be so good. So lemon balm is really known for calming without making you like tired or sleepy. So you could combine it with Tulsi if you wanted. Tulsi can be a little bit on the spicy side. So it's just something to keep in mind that you would be mixing this sort of like floral, slightly lemony with a spicy type scent with the basil. So this would be a really good one for monster spray. If you wanted to mix it with lavender for around like for calming, and then also maybe like when I was telling you my office story, it could be for your house as well because it will help just calm things down a little bit. If you or your kid is having a meltdown, can be for that. It's also really good for hot skin conditions. So if you wanted something that smelled a little bit better, it's very cooling, so it can help for anything like that. Just as we said before when we were talking about lotions and creams, lemon balm and lavender would be great, super great in any kind of lotions or creams. So if you have any unscented creams and you want to add some hydrosol to it, you can do that.
Essential herbal, right?
Essential herbal. If we make our way through the herbs, I can always share my screen and pull up the essential herbal too. And then the nerdy farm wife as well. Okay, roses. This is actually one of our roses that's pictured here. It smells exactly like you think it would. It smells like roses. Undiluted, it is super dramatic, super strong. I think it's lovely and delicious. If you dilute it, it just gets softer. Again, I would recommend this for desserts, beverages. It would be fantastic in combination with lemon balm as well. So if you were, again, going to make an icing or something like that, I'm obviously very focused on dessert. Well, it is getting closer to that time. It's really good as a hormone balancer. Doesn't matter your age. It's super cooling. So again, combined with lemon balm, like a nice face spritz or for sunburns or things like that. It is astringent. So like I was mentioning before when I was mentioning like the Indian store off of 4th Plain in Vancouver there, that's like rose water is a common sort of like toner for skin. So you could make little steams, really great for compresses, for anything like red skin, because it's a little astringent. If you have like rosacea or anything like that, or sort of red skin like that, it can be really good for that. Makes a great mask. So if you wanted to do a little oatmeal, rose hydrosol. We were talking earlier about baths, so they'd be really great for that. And you can actually combine it with lavender and chamomile, and just one of those little spray bottles like I had before. It would be really terrific, less than 4 ounces, right? It's what we're 4 ounces. When traveling happens again, it would be a really great choice to have like a little lavender, chamomile, rose hydrosol mixture in a little spray bottle, and you could keep that with you, and you could use it to ease the stress of making your way through TSA and the airport. And we're both like, if I don't always sleep well when we travel, I have a little bit of a hard time. You could spray a little bit on your pillow before you lay down. If you get sunburned because you're having so much fun out in the sun, all of those kinds of things, those 3 together, they would work really well. So a great little like travel bottle to take with you and just keep, in your carry-on bag. Again, if you really like the scent of roses, you could make your whole house smell like it with whatever you're cleaning. I don't know if my dog would like that if I vacuumed the furniture and then sprayed it with roses. Maybe that's a good idea. Keep her off the couch. It's way too late for that. And I had, again, mentioned desserts, any kind of beverages or things like that. So if you like a more floral type beverage of some sort, it could be really good for that. So And somebody had asked earlier about spraying with roses. Sometimes this is one of the herbs that can be difficult. So if you, this one I wouldn't necessarily just go and harvest from anywhere. Either get them from your house where you know they haven't been sprayed, or get them from a friend's house or something like that where you know that they haven't been sprayed. Because I think roses just have so many pests and diseases that oftentimes they'll end up being sprayed. So with this particular herb, it's something to keep in mind. And this is what you will find commercially the most easily, that you could find like that. You could find it at some of the local stores like that, like any of the Thai stores or the Indian stores, things like that. You might be able to find it at like Freddy's or New Seasons or something like that. And so if in this instance, this is a really great example. If you wanted to have rose water or rose hydrosol to drink, I would check the ingredients carefully to make sure that there's no preservatives, because this is the most likely one you are to readily and easily find on the shelf wherever you are. And then it will be common for it to have preservatives because it's not necessarily meant to drink.
When should you pluck the blooms?
So
petals?
This picture that's pictured here, where it's pretty much fully open, and I think if you look, you can see where it's got some kind of colors on it, just a little bit, like some white or lighter colors. This is like perfect. I probably took a picture of it and then I just plucked the petals off right after I took the picture. So I wait for them to open a little bit.
Almost all the way.
Almost all the way if I can. Yeah. Trying to find that sweet spot.
Bud.
No, I do not take just the buds. No. Okay. And what else? Oh, really quick on like just a quick thing about harvesting. Just harvest when you can. If it's in the afternoon, who cares? Know that if you do harvest in the afternoon, your oil content will be lower. But, do what you got to do so that you can enjoy it. All right, we've mentioned, several people had mentioned peppermint, very like refreshing, zingy. It's a really good one in just like an aromatherapy spray to like wake you up in the morning, or maybe like at that mid-morning break because you've had too many Zoom calls that day or whatever the deal is. Really great in like iced teas or cooling drinks. So especially in the summertime, fantastic on sunburns and things like that. Compresses, all of that kind of stuff. Bites, stings, anything that's itching red hot, you could just spray it right on there. So yeah, I'm sure as you're probably figuring out, like undiluted, it's going to be super zingy, very strong. Again, if you're making it at home though, I would give it a little taste beforehand. Let's see. Oh, go ahead.
I have pineapple mint growing in my yard and it smells wonderful. Could I use the flowers and leaves to make a hydrosol?
Yes. Yeah, I would use any kind. We have orange mint, lavender mint, chocolate mint, peppermint, spearmint. I think that's it for all of the different kinds of mints that we have. I would use any one of those. So yeah, we have apple mint. Yeah, I would use any one of the mints that you have. I would just go for it. Give it a try.
Someone had a question about roses.
Can we go sorry. Back? Yeah.
We missed it. If they don't have a scent, you probably wouldn't.
No, if your roses, those are probably roses that are like hybrid roses that were designed or bred to be pretty but not smell. And so I wouldn't use those. I would use ones that smell good. And so those made like we have some that maybe even that was pictured there. That one may be from one of the, so when they do the what is that called? Like they have the rootstock and then they graft, so the grafted roses, this is probably one of the ones that the rootstock, like the grafted part died, and then this is like the heritage or sort of heirloom rootstock that smells really good but they get sprawly. We have two of those right in the front yard, and that's what I use for the roses. So
what about catmint and maybe catnip?
So I would use catnip. Know that it's going to be a little smoky, maybe is a good word. Some people think it smells a little skunky. but catnip is very relaxing to people, especially in teas. So I don't see why you couldn't also use it as a hydrosol. I don't know that I would drink it just because it may not taste super good. And I would say it also could work really well as a potential bug repellent or a pest bug deterrent, like as a spray on your body with, you could add some peppermint so it smells good and then some yarrow along with it.
Catmint?
I find that catmint doesn't have a great smell or much of a smell, but I don't see why you couldn't try it. I find catmint to be pretty, but not tasty or with a good smell. Maybe you have a different variety.
Russian sage?
Same thing with Russian sage. I feel like it's decorative and not super fragrant or tasty. Okay.
Did we finish with peppermint, with mints?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
All right, lavender. This was actually our wagon that we filled with our very last lavender harvest just a few days, like a week ago, maybe.
Yeah,
So I posted it to Facebook. If you follow us there, you may have seen this picture. We kind of mentioned this one earlier. One of the things to know about it, it is very strongly floral, and there can be a little bit of a soapy undertone if it's not diluted. So, and this is too where, so this is a great picture actually of the lavender, and somebody was asking earlier about what parts would you use. I would cut all of those little purple heads off, and I would not put those stems in there. I would just use the purple heads if I was doing the hydrosol at home. Excuse me, again, it's really good for sunburns, anything that's hot, terrific for bites and itching. So this would be a great one for your first aid kit. You can use it in a compress on the back of your neck or on your forehead. So it can be really good for like headaches. If you get migraines, which I do sometimes, and smells are not a problem for you with the migraines, you could try this as sort of a way to ease migraines, and you could mix some lemon balm and some lavender and just get your cloth, like a nice soft cloth, kind of damp, and put that and get in your dark, quiet place and rest. This is one of the ones you'll commonly see for children. And so something like the monster spray we were talking about before, this could be a good like boo-boo spray. Helps kind of calm everybody down too. Here with Roman chamomile can be really good for diaper rash as well. Super good for, again, older skin. Or if you have kind of like thin skin or sensitive skin, it could be really good. Combine this with roses for a really nice like makeup remover. If men are interested in smelling like lavender, or they could combine it with lemon balm, it'd be really good either before and or after for shaving, or you could use it, ladies, you could use it on your armpits if you wanted to. This was the spray that I used when I did my office that I was mentioning of. So really common, you'll find it in room sprays or things like that. And once again, in desserts. So any kind of, I just keep visualizing iced cookies and cakes and things like that. I think this is our last one. So this is thyme. So there are lots of different kinds of thyme. There are lemon, lime, French, English. Those are a little bit more of like the common culinary varieties. It can have a little bit of a sweet flavor to it, some floral undertones, and a little bit of fruity taste. If you dilute it a little bit, you won't even know that it's thyme. Like, you will be amazed that this is thyme, hydrosol. Someone was asking earlier about tea tree. And tea tree isn't really readily something that you can grow here in the Pacific Northwest. And instead, I would recommend if you wanted to DIY your own and substitute something for tea tree, you could do thyme instead. And so you could make a thyme hydrosol. You could put that in your diffuser. You could use it to help wipe down counters or things like that. If you were looking for something to put in your neti pot, that could be really good. Thyme is generally very associated with like sinus, nasal, and chest congestion and things like that. So you could use it that way. Because it's really Highly has a lot of properties that are antiviral and antifungal. It's really great for your face, any kind of wounds, anything like that. It's really good. Again, you could, we mentioned household. This is a good one to mix in with your soap, maybe some lavender and thyme. And so you might get some of that antiviral action in your soap for washing your hands. And pretty much anywhere that you would put thyme in culinary, and you could try it in any drinks at all.
Full
So
strength in your neti pot? You mean dilute it?
oh yeah, for doing the thyme hydrosol. So I put my neti pot away during the break. But I probably put about, probably about 1/3 of a cup of the salt water mixture in there. And then I would probably put no more than 2 teaspoons of thyme hydrosol in the neti pot. Does that help? All right. So for those of you who didn't have a chance to see the video during the break, this was the big glass flask for our setup on the farm. And so I put Tulsi or holy basil, rose petals, and lemon balm. And I filled the flask super full. And so that was the hydrosol that I did as a demo for the video for this week. So that's what this picture is of. And you can see I didn't chop up the rose petals, but I did chop up the Tulsi and the lemon balm into about 1 to 2 inch sections. So any final questions at all? All right. So really quick before we leave though, I'll just give a little plug for our herb farm, among other things. And so every month we create and send out a little newsletter with free herb information. We usually write a blog and we have some recipes or things like that. So if you're interested, go to our website, which is gardendelightsfarm.com, and you can find out how to sign up for that online. We just sent our newsletter out for both July and August. Summer is sometimes a little harder for us, but you'll, if you get on that newsletter list now, then in late August, early September, we will end up doing another one. And then thank you to NatureScaping, amazing, amazing organization. And thank you to the Camas Library. We've taught classes there before as well. Were people interested in the last few minutes seeing a couple of those websites that I mentioned through, I mentioned the Essential Herbal and the Nerdy Fine. Okay, I see a couple of people. All right, so bear with me. All right.
And just while you're doing that, I just wanted to hop on and say one thing, which is that I'll probably be sending out the email with the link to the recording probably late by the end of next week. So you can be on the lookout for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Elliot. Okay, so here is the Essential Herbal. Can everybody see that at least somewhat okay? So they have a magazine that they send out every 2 months, I think, every other month. And so it's a magazine that we get. It's written, the articles are written by herbalists for like home-based herbalists. And the intent is to make herbalism very accessible. And in fact, the glass hydrosol setup that we purchased and that we use, we were inspired to purchase that from Tina, the woman who writes, or who is the editor of this magazine. So Tina Sams is the editor and her sister Marianne helps her. And I don't know, it's very good. They have a lot of really good information. And like I mentioned, there was an article earlier this year or late last year about elderberry, for example, that somebody was doing some research on that was really cool. So, so usually I'm just clicking on the left. Here's the current issue. The magazine is no longer, you can't read it by hand anymore. The cost just got to be too much, and so now it's electronic. So that's just something to keep in mind, but the information is fabulous. So this is just, it's essentialherbal.com is the website. And then the Nerdy Farm Wife Thanks for being patient while I click through things. So here is her website. You can see over on the right-hand side, she has a natural soap making. So the fastest way on her website to go through is right up here at the top. It says Plant Inspirations, and I would click there. And then I'm gonna scroll down. And so she has different things. So you can see lavender, dandelion, roses, lemon balm, plantain, mint, calendula. So all different kinds of recipes. And if you keep scrolling, she has all of her recipes alphabetical. So there's lots more. Echinacea, there's elderberry. Somebody was bringing up that one. She has also elderflower, elder leaf. So she separated them out. Chamomile, all of that kind of stuff. And so then you can just click, we'll just pick basil. So she has an anti-aging face cream. So there's just an example. So she does a lot of like lotions, creams, salves, things like that. And soap is kind of her big thing. Excuse me. So I'm just scrolling down. So she actually has witch hazel in this face cream recipe, which is a hydrosol. So if you purchase witch hazel from the store, that's a hydrosol. It's a distillation of the witch hazel plant. So if you think you're buying just plain witch hazel, now you know you're actually buying a hydrosol. And so there's an example of where a hydrosol is being used in a cream that way. Okay. All right. Any other questions or anything else like that?
Thank you.
Thank you all so very much. Friday evening, oh my goodness, you guys are living it up with us. So hopefully you got some good information. Please feel free to send us an email through our website if you have any other additional questions. Please be sure to check out NatureScaping. Yep, stay cool, make some hydrosols, and be ready to spritz yourself as the hot weather comes in.
Repeat our
website. Garden Delights. So with an S, gardendelightsfarm.com. You know what? We'll just go. Because I can tell you right now, this computer has been there a lot because I've been working on the website. So there you go. There's our website. So thank you all again so very much. Have a good evening. Thank you to Elliot and everybody at NatureScaping, and have a good weekend and try to stay cool.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.